Peace, y'all. Thank you for watching and listening. And today I'm just going to get right into it. I am talking about a cult called the Finders Cult. And y'all, this story is crazy. I mean, all cult stories are crazy. I don't want to label it as crazy. They're just, I just don't understand. And this is why I kind of have been interested in knowing about, like, okay, why do people join cults? What makes them stay? What makes them, I don't know. It's just very interesting to me, and I just want to always find out more. I like to know about I just like to know how people think and, like, what was going through their mind when, if you know about like Scientology, like they make you sign a billion-year contract. Like what was going through their mind when they were reading that? Or like in the Nexium documentary, they talked about getting a branding and things like that. So it's interesting, but this cult is on a different level. And yeah, let me just get into it right now. Let me take a little sip of water and let's get started. So the Finders Cult. The Finders Cult is a cult that came to light in the 80s. And it starts with two men who were found with 6 children, all under the age of like 10. They were like very young and they looked kind of disheveled, dirty, neglected. So someone called the cops on them. And they were brought in for questioning, and everything just didn't line up to all these cops that were like originally investigating it. The two gentlemen said that they were taking the kids to Mexico for a like gifted kids school that they were helping build. I don't know. The story just gets crazier and crazier. So the story just didn't add up, and the cops thought it was strange that, there was no mother with the children, and come to find out these children had different mothers. So as the children were being questioned, there was all kinds of weird behavior. So some of the cops said that the kids were using the restroom on the floor. They did look malnourished, neglected. Some of the kids said they were hungry and they haven't eaten since the morning. When one of the girls was asked about like anyone touching her in an inappropriate way, she started acting really weird. She talked about how they were being weaned away from their mothers, and how they just traveled a lot and they weren't allowed to sleep in the house, and just a lot of red flags, like a lot of red flags, not just from one child, but from all of the children. So these documents, you can find them online, and I'll insert some pictures and stuff, but it gets crazier. So next, eventually with the investigation, the cops found out that the mothers were all in the DC area. Then, come to find out, the DC area, or wherever they had property, this group, the Finders Cult, the cops in the DC area were looking for them as well, or like investigating them. So that was just another huge red flag. Like, okay, these dudes are in Florida. Oh, I can't remember what state they were caught in their own state. They're also being investigated. So everything was just kind of really fishy, but it gets crazier. So somewhere along the lines, the CIA gets like intertwined in this. And You can see this all in the documents, like all of the files that were released. You can find them online. It's really sad because God only knows how many kids were trafficked in this group. So, moving right along. When the investigators started talking to the cops that were in the DC area, they got a warrant and they got to search the property. They also got to talk to these women who claimed to be the mothers of these children. So they found a lot of weird and suspicious things in the house, but it still didn't like ring any bells. It didn't like wake them up to see that something was going on, something was wrong here. They found photographs of the adults and the children participating in like slaughtering a goat. And there was evidence, like pictures of this. And that's fine. Like there are there are cultures that do these things. Like, you raise a goat, you kill it to eat it. But there's kind of like a line where things have to be drawn, and there's a line of where like something is just like done in an evil way in the name of religion. So that was just one sign. Also on their properties, plural. So they had a house, they had a warehouse. I'll get to the warehouse in a second. As they were interviewing the mothers talked about, they were just a little compound. Also, the two guys lied about going to Mexico. There was just so many loose ends in the story that I am just like, my mind is boggled that nothing else, well, I know why nothing else happened, because it kind of what turned into a cover-up. Not kind of, it did. Well, I'll say allegedly. I'll just say allegedly. Anyway, so they had a warehouse, and like none of this is funny. I know that there is like the trend of people doing like true crime videos talking about cults, and like I don't think any of this is like hilarious or funny, because this has to do with kids' lives. This has to do with families' lives, like honestly, I don't even know if those kids were like their biological children. Like none of that was clear. So anyways, moving on to like some of the more crazier things that they found. So in the house, they also found how-to guides on how to kidnap children, how to just abuse people, and especially children. So it is insane to me. So they found these, and it wasn't just like something scribbled on a piece of paper. In the documents, it says that these were literal like handbooks on how to do these things, like as if this was an organized crime group. So that's very sad. The next big thing that they did find, this group owned lots of computers. And back in the 80s, it was probably rare to find anyone with like a desktop. Computers like didn't really come out. I'm sure like intelligence agencies had them, obviously, because I personally think that technology isn't released to the public until like years later. So who knows what they have in store, like behind the scenes. But anyway, moving along. This group also owned a warehouse, like I said. So listen to this. The warehouse had different rooms, and one of the rooms that like stood out to me and probably would stand out to anyone was a room that was set up like with a camera and a bed. So literally just like a production room for you fill in the blank. Long story short, the CIA interfered and basically said there wasn't enough evidence to do anything to these people. And it was just a done deal. But the story gets crazier. So my theory, my opinion, these aren't facts. These are just like my, I guess, critical thinking, is that this group just went underground. Like, there are a lot of other people who agree with me, like on Reddit, obviously Reddit, but there is some evidence that shows that these people are still in existence, and that a lot of people think that this was like a really connected to the CIA, connected to like MK Ultra stuff, which I talked about in my last video a little bit, but I'm gonna do a whole video probably on MK Ultra, but connected to MK Ultra, connected to obviously CIA being an intelligence agency. They're going to use things that they find for war. So think of that. And I know a lot of times, like in Hollywood, we see, let's say, like James Bond or something. And I feel like Hollywood puts all of this stuff in our face, not everything, but a lot of things, to kind of desensitize us and to kind of like make us believe that it just happens in movies. I'm not saying everything, but I am saying like there are some things that I think are bombarded into our psyche that if we see it long enough, it's not going to bother us in real life, or we're not going to think it's real because, oh, that's just in the movies type thing. So I can go on for days about how many conspiracy theories I have on things, but this one is just unreal. So let me get to like the crazier part. So like fast forward, that was the 80s, and a lot of people said, you know, they just brushed it off as being like crazy conspiracy theorists coming up with all these things, because apparently in the late 80s, I was born in 82. So I feel like in the 80s, there was like this weird panic and fear that children were going to be kidnapped. One, you had the milk jugs or whatever you call them, milk cartons that had the missing kids on there. I have a theory about that too. Anyway, but then I also remember being taken to like this event where all of the children, like if you were a parent, you brought your kid there for free fingerprints and free like pictures. So if you did get kidnapped, you know, they had all of the information that they need. They had an updated picture, they had our fingerprints. I think that's a little weird. Anyway, but back then there was that little, you know, fear mongering thing, as well as I think there was a kindergarten in the news that they got busted for either like child abuse or something more, and I'm gonna look into that as well. But a lot of people just thought like, oh, these conspiracy theorists are just making stuff up with the Finders Cult. It has nothing to do with our government. But okay, we know for a fact that our government and the Canadian government did lots of experiments with MK Ultra without people's consent. So that's just one thing. There's so many things that I could make videos of. It's kind of sad. All right, so I just want to wrap this video up. I don't want these videos to be too long and drawn out, but I want to know your opinions. What do you think? Like, look up the Finders Cult and see what you find. The last thing is present time. So that all happened in the 80s. And like I said, I kind of have a theory that obviously, okay, you get caught. If they were supposed to, stay under the radar, which most cults do until things get a little bit out of hand or a lot out of hand, I think it's just more than a cult anyway, but they probably came up with a strategy to completely disappear. And fast forward to now, or like within the last few years, someone stumbled upon a very weird YouTube channel that had a lot of weird videos. It had codes, so like lots of like, scrambled letters that you have to decode. Obviously, I'm like explaining what a code is. But within the video, within the description, the title of the video was all codes. So someone sitting on their computer at home decided to try to like crack this code, and it led to a couple of different Twitters that had more codes. And then it also, they did more research and they cracked it. So they cracked the code, and there was some stuff about finding the finders. There was some really graphic stuff, I believe, in some of these videos. And it kind of just led to more questions and to more like creepy things. Also, with our regular internet, if you're not, I don't know, I don't want to categorize anyone that goes on the deep web or the dark web because who knows? But anyway, there are people that go searching for things in the dark web. Someone also found a website there with some information about the Finders cult. So there's stuff still circulating out there. There's so much more information because some of the documents, I didn't read all of the released documents that had to do with them. But in the research that I did, there's just like, it's just mind-blowing that there's no one held accountable for these things. And it's just really scary that these things surface and like you don't know what's being done about it. Like case closed and that's it. So I kind of like that it has resurfaced, at least the information, obviously not the cult, but I like that people are starting to look into different things like this to see like, is this really going on under our nose and we don't even know that? Like we don't know that it's just happening in our own backyards and things like that. So it's kind of scary, but this was a very interesting one. And if I find out more information, I'll make another video, but what a world we live in. But anyways, like, subscribe. Well, that's the end. Let me know what you think about this cult and what you think about just cults in general. If you looked into this, let me know any other information that you found. But that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you like, subscribe. Peace. Have a great week.